Today I'm reading from Rays of the One Light. These are commentaries on the Bible and Bhagavad Gita. Thank you. Written by Swami Kriya-yoga and based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. This week's reading is entitled, Intuition is Simple, the Intellect is Complex. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. In the Gospel of St. Mark, we read a passage that Yogananda often quoted. And they brought young children to him that he might touch them, and his disciples rebuked those that brought them. But when Jesus saw it, he was much displeased and said unto them, Suffer the little children to come unto me, forbid them not, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. Verily I say unto you, whosoever shall not receive the kingdom of God as a little child, he shall not enter therein. It has often been noted that a critical attitude tends to paralyze creativity. Good critics, for example, seldom produce works of creative genius, though their creations may be intellectually clever. The intellect separates, it analyzes, and puts things together again piece by piece. Intellect lacks intuition's flow, which descends smoothly like a river from the superconsciousness. Yogananda described intuition as the soul's power of knowing God. To receive the kingdom of God, Jesus was saying, one must do so with the openness and trust of a little child. Intellectuals may object to this statement, saying, but there must be also discrimination. You wouldn't want a person to be so open-minded that his brain falls out. The truth is, however, that the intellect can be fooled even when it does its best to discriminate wisely. Only intuition is capable of penetrating to the heart of a matter and knowing truth from falsehood. It was the clear understanding of a child, not the elaborately persuaded intellects of his elders, that enabled the child in Hans Christian Andersen's story to cry out in surprise, "Why isn't the emperor wearing any clothes?" Therefore it was that Sri Krishna in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita says, "To you, Arjuna, who are free from the carping spirit, I shall now reveal wisdom sublime. Grasping it with your mind and perceiving it by intuitive realization, you shall escape the evils of delusion." Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Yesterday, we were blessed in the Ananda community down the street to have a program that we put on every year called the Joy-a-thon. And every year, Tom organizes it beautifully. And there's lots of food and entertainment, and there's some healers set up offering healing treatments. And I always enjoy this day almost more than any other day of the year because it's so sweet and it's so relaxed and people are just having fun together. It's just wonderful. So there was a boy displaying yo-yo tricks to beautiful music, and someone else played the piano, and two little girls each sang a solo, a cappella. And they were very brave. And just little girls. And one of them was like chickening out at the last minute. And there was a voice from the audience saying, "It's okay. We're all your friends here. Don't be afraid." So sweet. And Chaitanya sang a barbershop quartet by himself. He recorded 3 parts and then sang live the 4th part. And I kept thinking, oh, their voices blend so perfectly. But he learned all the parts and recorded 3, and it was wonderful. What else? Michelle and Alan sang several songs, and they riffed on Purple People Eater, which I have not thought of since I was a little kid. It'll probably be going through my mind now for quite a while. But everything was wonderful, and Prem and Hara did a skit about the internet, which was incredibly true, scary true, but it was extremely funny. So it just was a wonderful day. And someone told dad jokes, so I have to tell the 2 that I remember. You can't trust atoms because they make up everything. And the other one I remember is, I can always tell if someone is lying. I can also tell if they're standing. So that gives you an idea of the down-home, sort of relaxed, everybody being themselves kind of energy. And it was so sweet. And we had, I don't know, more than 50 people there. It was wonderful. And towards the end, as things were, we had a raffle too, which was fun. As things were starting to wind down, people were starting to clean up and all that sort of thing. I got a healing treatment from Yoko, who does pranic healing. And so she just had me sitting, meditating, which was amazing, because I could hear this soft swirl of energy, kids running and talking, and people just chatting and laughing, and I was just absorbing the vibration of all of that, plus Yoko's beautiful healing energy, and I just was so uplifted. It was as though the whole area was sparkling. It was just beautiful, beautiful energy. Sometimes people say that Ananda is a little bit of heaven on earth. And I really felt that yesterday, because people were being childlike. They weren't being childish. Jesus is making that distinction because it's important that we don't act like children in a bad way, that we act like children in a good way. And the bad way is like a toddler not getting his way, and he lays on the floor and starts pounding the floor. I mean, talk about lower chakras. You can't get any more lower chakra than that. And just screaming because he can't get his way. Well, adults do that in a little bit subtler way, but it's often the same kind of energy. And teenagers sometimes, if they are frustrated, which in this day and age especially I can understand frustration, they take to being cynical or snide or critical. It's a coping mechanism, and adults can have that too. As people get older, they tend to just be flat out critical of everything. The government, the politics, which is, that's true. Can be critical of it. But everything, the weather, their neighbors, and just sort of descend into this gossip energy. As Sri Yukteswar said, people like to chop off other people's heads to make themselves appear taller. And gossip is like a little steam vent that lets off some of the energy of being dissatisfied inside. That's what that is. So all those things are the childish side. And it's very important that we grow up, that we get ourselves out of those attitudes and instead become childlike. Now, how do we do that? We have to work at getting rid of that notion that things need to be a certain way. Often in these readings, Swami will talk about how anger originates from thwarted desire. We want things to be different than the way they are, and we're going to just stand up for that, and we're going to fight for that, rather than accepting things as they are and learning to be solution-oriented, which you can't really do when you're angry. When you're angry, you just want to vent, just scream and shout. The less logical it is, the more it should be loud. So if we can accept things as they are and then calmly work to change them, that's spiritual maturity. That's not expecting anything of anybody and just working to improve yourself and trying to influence people, especially your children. You know, you're trying to set a good example. You're trying to show them how to deal with anger and frustration, how to think about things, how to be clear and open. And those are the qualities of the devotee. Those are the childlike qualities. We want to be open and receptive. There's a beautiful passage. It's become my new mantra from the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna and Arjuna are talking, and Arjuna just opens himself and says, I am your disciple. Teach me. It sums up everything. That childlike openness and receptivity to God's will. And how do we cultivate that? Well, the first and the key to it, Swami says, is that we have to not hide any part of ourselves from God's scrutiny. Just lay it all out there. Spoiler alert, he already knows anyway. So why try to hide and go, okay, well, this is mine over here in my pocket. I'm not going to share that. He is the pocket. He knows everything. So embrace it. There's a wonderful story of India in which Narada, who is a great sage and who is also the messenger of the gods, often, they send him on missions. So Vishnu sends Narada into the earth, out to the earth, and says, let me know who you think is the best devotee on earth right now. Who's the best one? So Narada's wandering around and he sees some people chanting and doing yoga and all these different things, and they're pretty good. But then finds this one guy in a cave. And he's standing on one leg and he has one arm up, and he's been doing that for 10 years straight. And he's chanting mantras the whole time, and he's meditating, and just very, very, very powerful. Narada's impressed. And he goes, okay, this must be the guy. So he's headed back to Vishnu, and as he's traveling, he notices this one guy who's a simple farmer, and Narada is sort of wondering about him, and so he observes him for a little while. And the farmer gets up every morning before dawn. He goes out into his yard and he says, "Hey, Bhagavan!" And then he goes out and he works all day. And then he comes home, and before he goes to bed, he goes, "Hey, Bhagavan!" And Narada thinks that's sort of silly. And so he goes back to Vishnu and tells him about all the people he's met. And then he goes, but there's this one yogi in the cave. And he tells Vishnu all about this yogi. And Vishnu goes, well, I don't remember this guy. Tell me more about him. So Narada explains what he looks like and where he lives and what he's doing all over again. And Vishnu goes, I don't remember. Wasn't there somebody else that you saw? And Narada thinks, well, there was only this farmer. Vishnu goes, yes, that farmer. Tell me about him. Well, all he does is say, hey, Bhagavan. And Vishnu said, yes, but he thinks about me all day. And then at night he says good night, right before he goes to sleep. And then he dreams about me all night. He loves me. So go back. Go back and tell them, both of them, that I'm not pleased with them. And so Narada goes back, and he goes to the guy in the cave and says, well, I just talked to Vishnu, and he didn't even remember you. And the man who'd been standing like this for 10 years put down his foot, folded his arms, and said, I'm done with this crazy stuff, and stomped off. I'm going to go get a job, maybe in Silicon Valley. And Narada went to the farmer. He said, Vishnu didn't have much to say about you. The farmer said, even if he knows I exist, that's all I care about. I will continue to love him no matter what. Doesn't that remind you of Job? Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. Love. That's all that God wants. Swami would often say that's the only thing that God doesn't have in this whole universe is our love. And that's the only thing he wants in this whole universe. And it's ours to give or withhold. So let's give him our love. And repeat that little saying from the Gita. I am your disciple. Teach me.
So Nirmala talked a little bit about the Joyathon yesterday, and I have to segue onto that a bit. She missed the star of the show. Now, Alan was pretty awesome, I have to say.
It was true.
Alan and Michelle, but Alan in particular with the song. I mean, that was It's really off the chart.
But the star.
The star of the show, however, was actually Chaitanya's cat. And Chaitanya has this tiny little kitten, about 6 weeks old, whose name is
Blissy.
Blissful Touch. First name and last name, Blissful Touch. Anyway, this little cat, about yay long, little ginger, wanted to sit on everybody's shoulder, basically. So there's all sorts of photos with different people having Blissful Touch climbing on their shoulder. Well, the reason I mentioned Blissful Touch is because you can't get much more childlike than a little kitten on a certain level. You know, this little cat is tiny and vulnerable and completely trusting in whatever's happening. And by the way, not afraid to say something once in a while too. But it just the cutest little thing. And what struck me is a child. You know, if you think about, I mean, this may be a very American thing to do, is try to analyze what makes a child a child. You know, it's like, well, let's see, now it's not this. And I learned, by the way, Nirmala mentioned the teenage years. I learned something this week that I didn't know before, which is that the term teenager, anybody know when that came into existence? It was around the 1940s. There was not a concept of teenagehood prior to that, or at least it wasn't identified as such. It's like it's more of a more recent thing, which is to say that prior to that, you kind of went from childhood to adulthood or something. I mean, obviously not in one leap, but nevertheless, there wasn't this in-between period. But anyway, going back to what is a child? What is childlike about a child as opposed to childish about a child, just as Nirmala was talking about? Well, one of the things is that a child is not afraid to say what's happening. I'm hungry, Mom. I'm tired, I'm crabby, I'm whatever. I want to go to want to go run around outside, etc. And if we think of, in contrast, our own needs and our own what's happening often gets tangled up in, but I shouldn't say, but it's like there's all these qualifying factors of dealing with reality that we get tangled up in. One way of describing those might be thwarting cross currents of ego, that we get caught up in this, and that's an adult sort of thing to do. But it doesn't have to be that way. And by the way, this is an interesting little feature of the discussion, that the sainthood of a master is not naive. It may be childlike, but it is not naive. It's that they've seen everything, and they're not bound by anything. And so for us to achieve that, one of the features of it is just simply to be in the moment. A child is here and now. And it means if they stub their toe, they're going to cry because it hurts. And they're not afraid to cry because it hurts. It's just what's happening right now. But they immediately move on to the next thing. I remember watching a little kid. I was babysitting as it happened, and then, it's like, you don't want anything bad to happen to the kid when you're babysitting them. It's like, this is not a good idea. But naturally, they fell down, skinned their knee. But there was this interesting moment, right at the pivotal moment. Okay, the fall, the skin knee. Well, there was this turn and look moment. What are you going to do? And I was like, hey, wow. And I'm like, okay, let's go. They just got up and was like, okay, let's get on with it then. We're having fun here. Let's go. And, if it had been serious enough, I would have, hey, well, are you okay? Is this going to be all right? But I thought, there was enough of a pause there. It was like, they were reading the crowd, how's this going to work out? Am I going to get a lot of sympathy, and should I cry and try to squeeze as much juice out of this as I can, or what? And, but a child sits right on that moment. And as we grow up, we learn different responses, and we learn to milk the crowd in different ways. But we don't have to get caught in that thwarting cross current. The other day, a little child was in the community visiting, and we all happened to be in Master's kitchen at the same time. And she's a little thing, just walking, and mostly riding, but walking when she needs to. But anyway, I happened to be there. Now, I didn't really know this little girl real well, but she walked up to me at a certain point, looked up at me, and stuck her hands up like this. It's like, you there, what are you doing standing there? Pick me up. Don't just stand there, do something. So I picked her up, put her on my shoulder. Like, okay, you got a better view up here, so enjoy it. I set her down and started to walk away. She put her hands up. I was like, hey, well, you're not going anywhere. Pick me up again. What do you think? But that ability to just stay with the moment and be okay. Look, I want this or I need that. It's, there's not a lot of filter. But to sort of transcend all the thwarting cross currents of ego, all of that caught up in gridlock of consciousness, to go to the level of the saint is to say, Divine Mother, I realize this is your drama. This is your show. And I am playing my part, and I'm enjoying the show. And I'm also learning from the show. I'm learning whatever it is that can be learned. That's really, you think of if you could sort of distill down all the years of education, all the years of going to school that a child puts in, they learn how to learn, hopefully. That's like a real main key. Yes, okay, they learn some information, they learn how to read, and they learn math, and, some basics that are helpful for future life. But learning how to learn, it's not automatic. That's the weird thing. You can actually probably get good marks in school and still not quite learn how to learn. Because all of us get faced with situations where we don't know the answer. Well, then what are we going to do? A child will just start trying stuff. The adult doesn't necessarily try stuff because, oh my God, what if I fail? That would be like disastrous to my ego. I failed, oh my God. Oh. But if we just try, then we're in that pivotal moment where, gosh, I might actually learn something from this. And it's never a bad day if we learn something. It may be an uncomfortable day. It may, on some outward levels, it may even be sort of a disastrous day. But if we learn something, tomorrow's going to be a better day. It's a lesson we won't repeat, or a lesson we won't fail as badly the next time. And so take that test, you might say, of childlike, or as Nirmala was describing the dichotomy of childish versus childlike, and it's okay to use the intellect a little bit once in a while and analyze, gosh, where am I on the childish versus childlike spectrum? Did I tip over into the childish side, or am I ascending towards the true childlike side? When Christ says, "Suffer little children to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven," it made me think, and this is a thought that occurred to me when I was a kid, because I remember heaven being described to me in church, etc. And I also remember thinking, maybe this is inching towards my teenage years, but I remember thinking, oh, wait a minute here. You guys are promising me this heaven thing, but I got to wait till after I die to get there. That seems like a raw deal to me. This waiting till you die thing doesn't sort of satisfy the questions in my mind and in my heart. But then I remember, because I made a study of the Bible, I was pretty energetic about it, and I remember hitting the line, the kingdom of heaven is within you. Now, my translation of the Bible had all sorts of references, all sorts of little translation-related things. And so there was a little note attached to that one. So down at the bottom of the page, it says, or among you. Within you or among you, which I thought was interesting, and it really annoyed me no end, because it was like, well, which is it? Darn it, make up your minds. Is it within you or is it among you? I mean, come on. Because the among you part sort of made me think, well, gosh, if it's among you, then it sort of means you have to go to church, which I wasn't at all excited about the whole time. I mean, mostly I enjoyed it, but, it was like you have to collectively have heaven, which didn't really quite seem right to me. But the other part that I realized later is that the kingdom of heaven is within you, or even among you, if you go down that trail. At least it's here. You don't have to wait till you die. It's actually here. It's present. It's not far away. It's not something that you have to trust fancifully. It's like you can actually learn to realize heaven is within. But the requirement is that trust of a child to receive what life gives, but to always know that reality is inside. It's not, the pairing of this affirmation was beautiful, because it's not about all the things that happen. It's about what we realize on the inside from what happens. And that is an enormous key to a happy and fulfilled life, and to finding joy, to realizing joy, because we're made out of that joy. It's not far away. It's just that we can easily walk away from that center. It reminds me of one of the pivotal moments in The Hobbit, where the group is going into this forest. The forest, it's called Mirkwood. It's like, ooh. And the warning is, you stay on the trail. Because if you get off the trail, there is no guarantee that you will ever get back on that trail again. And, well, okay, this is not quite as dire as that. Because yes, you can go off the trail from joy and out into happiness and pleasure and pain and all the sort of spectrum that leads out away from center. And you can come back again. I've always loved the chant, I may go far, farther than the stars, but I will be thine always. And I've thought, you could chant that chant in the morning. I may go far, farther than the stars. And by midday or afternoon, you could be out there farther than the stars. But by the end of the day, if you sing it again, but I will be thine always, I'm still going to be like the guy Nirmala was talking about, the farmer, who, in my memory of the story, he was not just a farmer chanting Hey Bhagavan at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day. He was a drunk farmer who was trying to fit the fence posts into the hole, and he couldn't quite hit the hole. It's like, anyway, I don't know if it's the same story or not, but anyway, there were other nuances to the thing as well that made it even more colorful. But it isn't about because you compare that guy to the hermit doing the meditation and the standing on one leg and, all of that stuff, the tapasya part. He sounds pretty good, hey, that's pretty awesome. And Mr. Drunk Farmer trying to hit the hole, it's like, I don't know, that seems a little weird. But that, watching the heart, nobody can tell you where your heart's supposed to be. When you know, nobody can take that away from you. But unfortunately, nobody can give it to you either. So you have to cultivate that side of it. But once you do, God is watching. God's in your heart. And that joy is what we're made out of. And sooner or later, we'll find it again.